I go and look at these projects nowadays, and usually they look very simple and hastily built and maybe copied out of an example in a book. But in a science fair, you get to choose your own project. It's your own goals. You just have to find the way to achieve them and get it done and show it off. Another thing is, in a science fair like that, it's not a normal school project at all. Science fairs are sort of outside of school. You can do a huge project that takes weeks to build if you want to. And that's what I did when I was young. I loved the idea that I could make something that didn't exist. And I built projects with hundreds of switches, hundreds of wires, hundreds of relays, and all the work it took to create these things and drill hundreds of holes into wood for hundreds of light bulbs and things like that. And when I was done, it seemed kind of simple. Show the electron arrangements in an atom, or play tic-tac-toe and never lose, or add numbers in the computer language of zeros and ones. Wow, and I didn't mind that it was so huge numbers of parts. All my own designs, all my own thinking, never just copying someone else's. This is the chance that you have when you're young, and I claim that almost every youngster wants to be able to do this sort of thing. Why was I so lucky to actually do it? Well, I grew up in Silicon Valley, and yes, we had a lot of the building materials, the little tiny electronic parts that things were made out of around us. We had a lot of engineers in the neighborhood. We had a lot of youngsters that were electronic kids like myself, that liked to build their own little projects, to flash lights, to make tones, to have intercoms from house to house. And so I was very lucky at that. But nowadays, especially with the internet, the world of resources is much smaller, and you don't have to live in one particular place. I was inspired by some books I read, and the heroes in this story were basically engineers. A young kid, Tom Swift Jr., owned a company with his father, and when there was a world crisis, he would go into the laboratory and construct and build some apparatus that would solve the world problem. Wow, that was my hero when I was young. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be one of those inventors. I discovered amateur radio at an early age, and these are all types of education that are sort of outside the school. But there's no reason they couldn't be in the school, but they're really the ones that gave me my foundation for the things that I did for Apple. But I discovered amateur radio, that young people could transmit signals to another state, even to another country, and that anyone could become an amateur radio operator by studying and learning. I sent away for the materials. I studied, I learned Morse code, and I became an amateur radio operator at 11 years old. And I was so proud of myself, and you have to learn a lot of electronics. I had to construct out of kits of boxes full of parts. I had to bolt them together, solder wires, solder components in place, vacuum tubes, and I had a transmitter with dials on it, and a receiver with dials and switches, and I could make it work. What an incredible thing to do. Did I think that I was doing something amazing when I was young and did that? No, I just thought that it was the adventure of life. I was getting to be a Superman who could send signals to faraway cities. I discovered computers. There were no books on computers, no way back in those days that you would ever learn what a computer was, how computers were built. But I discovered by accident some journals that had articles that described little ones and zeros, and the mathematics of computers, and the decision-making called logic that computers had. And I played games on paper with what I learned, tiny little mathematical formulas and methods. It was so simple for a 10-year-old. You didn't need higher level mathematics. You didn't need algebra. You didn't need calculus. Any 10-year-old can understand every single digital part of any computer that is made to this day. That was my discovery. I was so happy with this discovery. I told myself, this is going to be my internal passion. This is going to be what I'm going to do for my entire life, even when people don't pay me money. I'm just going to study and practice and draw pictures and love these computers, this idea of a computer. I didn't know what a real computer was. A real computer was in a company or the military, and it did financial calculations, telling the company, how to pay its taxes. I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. I just knew that a computer could be taught a set of instructions to play a game and never lose. When I got to high school later on, the most important teacher in my life was my electronics teacher, Mr. McCullum. He went beyond the boundaries of the school. A lot of teachers will say, well, all we have to offer in here, we teachers are very busy, all we have to offer are our classrooms, our books, our teaching on the blackboard, and you learn from that. This electronics teacher went beyond the boundaries of the school. He got companies to donate parts that we could build things out of in our classes and learn electronics. He also arranged for students like myself to go out and learn more in real business. I got to go down and actually program a real computer when computers were unheard of. And one of the first programs I wrote was a chess program, and this computer could do 1 million things a second. And the chess program was to bounce a knight around the screen and hit every square exactly once. And it kept trying, and my program would back up and try a different method until it found the solution. 1 million things in a second it could try. And no answers came out. I went back and studied the issue and found out that my program would take 10 to the 25th years to get the answer. Longer than the universe has been around. What does that mean? What did I learn by that shock? What I learned was computers, no matter how fast they are, can't come up with the method to solve a problem. It's still the capacity of the human brain. Computers haven't gotten there yet. They still cannot say, here is an approach that might solve this certain kind of problem. Computers today can only be programmed to do totally normal, expectable things. When I discovered a description of a computer, and I thought back to my elementary school science fair projects, where I learned about little logic devices. And I said, how can I build this computer that's described in a manual? How can I build it out of these little parts? This is the essence of the best education in the world. You know how to combine the small parts. I will call them atoms. It might be the building blocks of a building like this. It might be knowing nails and bolts and machinery and hammers and types of lumber that you can buy. Knowing how to build them into a complete structure is the important thing. You want to have a goal, you know what the goal is, but you have to find your own way to create it. A lot of people say, my gosh, you go to school and you just learn it. It's in books. I was lucky to be self-taught. I had to think it out for myself. I had to write my own book on how to do it. I got very skilled designing all the computers in the world that I could get descriptions of. I would design one after another every weekend. I could design a computer in about 2 days. And my designs got better and better and better. And I made a rule in life. This rule is really what gets me here before you today. My rule was, can I make it simpler with fewer pieces and fewer steps by using my brain? Can I make it simpler than I did the last time? And my designs got to be fewer and fewer and fewer pieces, and I knew I was very good at it. When I told my father, someday I am going to own a 4K byte computer. And 4K bytes because then you can type a program in. You can run a program on it. And he said, how are you going to do that? It costs as much as a house. And I was shocked. So I said, I'll live in an apartment.